Rubio has also reacted to the scheduled talks. Rubio states that the US is hopeful about the Trump-Putin talks, but ultimately it will be up to Ukraine and Russia to agree to peace. Ambassador Dayal, let's come back into this. Let's jump back in and really dissect these comments, because Donald Trump has put the United States front and centre in these discussions way before any discussion of this Alaska summit. Even before those meetings in Istanbul, there were talks in the Gulf states separately between the US, Russia, US and Ukraine. So the US has been a key part of this. Is this the US now stepping away of these talks, or at least stepping away from the limelight, acknowledging that it does have to be Russia and Ukraine who come to a deal, something Trump hasn't always stood by, putting himself front and centre and saying he needs to be there for this deal to be done?
Well, he is beginning to realize that there are limitations to what he can do, because if the Ukrainians are not prepared to accept the sort of arrangements which the Russians want, then there can't be any peace deal. Zelensky has already made it very clear in several podcasts and interviews that he is not going to accept any sort of arrangement which pressurizes him to accept Russian sovereignty over Ukrainian territories like the Crimea and the Donbass region. So for this reason, I think probably Trump's advisors have also begun to caution him to be realistic. And I think that's one reason why he has toned down his rhetoric. Let me also mention that, President Trump sees himself as a great peacemaker. And this is perhaps linked to his desire to win the Nobel Prize, which is no secret. If you recall, in his inaugural address on January 20 this year, Trump had said, "My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and a unifier." And he has repeatedly said that this was the sort of reputation he wanted recorded in history books. So as I said, it's no secret that he covets the Nobel Prize. And for this, the ending of the Russia-Ukraine war was perhaps seen by him as something that would be very significant. In fact, the Washington Post had written that the road to Trump's Nobel Prize would lie through Ukraine. And that is one reason why he has been very keen on bringing this peace about. But he has begun to realize that there are limitations to what he can achieve.
Absolutely. And Ambassador Dayal, before we move to another related point, of course, these comments from Marco Rubio are also significant because, let's put it plainly, it doesn't matter what Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin agree to. If there is talk of concession of land, if there is talk about giving up Crimea, the Donetsk region, the Donbass region, any area that Ukraine has said flatly we will not give up, these talks are almost pointless anyway. Do you think this is an acknowledgement that ultimately it might be Volodymyr Zelensky who in this situation holds the keys, when it feels like he's been sidelined for so long in these talks?
Yes, of course, you're right. Zelensky is perhaps feeling slighted, and he has said that Ukraine was ready for real decisions that could bring dignified peace. But he has stressed that there could be no violation of the constitution on territorial issues. In fact, if you recall, he said the answer to the Ukrainian territorial issue is already in the constitution of Ukraine. No one will and cannot deviate from this. Ukrainians will not give up their land to the occupiers. So in view of this, Marco Rubio certainly seems to be toning down the US rhetoric, and I think it's becoming clearer that the summit, which is going to be held in Alaska, will achieve only very little. At best, it will set the stage for a forthcoming summit between all three parties, and in fact, that is what the Americans are now beginning to hint.
Yes, absolutely. Ambassador Dayal, I wish we had longer to speak on that topic. We could talk for hours, of course.